On the ground, which was littered with debris, Xiao Yan's body crashed through, creating a massive gap. The pure white angelic altar loomed over him like a shackle, covering his form. At the gap's edge, Xiao Yan stood slowly. There was seemingly no energy fluctuation around him, and at first glance, he appeared to be an ordinary mortal. However, a massive, heavy ruler on his back faintly emanated a surge of intense anger. This fluctuation is strange. The power seems almost on par with Ares, someone muttered. His strength really is at the peak of the 9th reincarnation stage. Beside them, with no one to stop her, Archangel Belen looked at the shadow standing in the void above the ground. Her eyes narrowed slightly, a trace of unnoticeable shock flashing across her gaze. According to the intelligence from the Angel Kingdom, after awakening from the reincarnation sea, this person had reached the peak of the 9th reincarnation stage, but at most, he was in the early stages. Why was he able to ascend to the mid-stage of the 9th reincarnation stage in such a short time, now standing on equal footing with Ares? It was simply unfathomable. Peak of the 9th reincarnation stage, mid-stage. The human god-child, who seemed to reign over all with his imposing presence, was momentarily stunned, not just by the sudden appearance of the figure, but by the power he radiated. So, it's this old bastard. But my plan, centuries in the making, is finally at a critical point. I won't let you ruin it now. The Dark King looked at the furious Xiao Yan, and the demonic power around him began to gather. A half-god in the early stages, and a peak mid-stage 9th reincarnation powerhouse. Quite the formidable array. Elder Xiao Yan muttered, feeling the stirring energy within his own body. Even the obsidian stone sword behind him seemed to ripple, shedding its black luster to reveal its glorious power. Crack! However, the Dark King showed no hesitation. He lifted his demonic hand and gently pointed. A cage made of demonic runes flashed into existence, twisting the void as it suddenly split open beneath Xiao Yan's feet, trapping him instantly. Xiao Yan, whose body still carried the aura of the god-slaying ruler, had easily been located by the Elder after it was restored, guided by its powerful aura. But now, facing a near-death situation, Xiao Yan's appearance was meant to save him. Yet the Dark King had neutralized the assault in an instant. This disaster, this grand spectacle, could only awaken, inherit, and absorb the purest demonic power at the very edge of life's end. The Dark King had already given everything for this purpose and would never let Xiao Yan's sudden arrival ruin it all. Most importantly, even if Xiao Yan could contend with Archangel Ares, the human godchild remained a hidden threat. This plan must proceed. Glurp. At this moment, the two women enclosed within the Flame God's cauldron, along with the King of Beasts and other trusted members of the Endless Flame Alliance, could only stare blankly at the Dark King. Who would have thought that just as the situation seemed to shift in their favor, the Dark King would crush that tiny glimmer of hope in an instant? The Dark King, was he really an accomplice to evil? Countless minds were blank, unable to fathom the Dark King's intentions. What was he trying to achieve with such actions? Ha ha ha. The so-called Endless Flame Alliance is nothing more than a joke. Dark King, once the Netherworld ends, the Human Realm Center will naturally grant you the respect and position you deserve. As the twin streams of destructive energy grew closer to the ground below, the human god-child laughed madly, his murderous intent being replaced by mockery deep within his eyes. He had never imagined that even someone as formidable as the Dark King would start to fear his power. Now, with the Dark King's intervention, trapping Xiao Yan, it was the perfect proof. He had yielded. But this was fine. With the Dark King out of the way, the journey to the Netherworld would be much easier. If the rebellious Xiao clan members could also be this wise, they wouldn't have nearly faced the annihilation of their entire clan. Dark King, what the hell are you doing? All the elites of the Endless Flame Alliance had their eyes nearly burst with fury, glaring at the Dark King's strange actions. Their bloodlines and powers seemed to boil with anger. I'm doing nothing, just letting you enjoy a truly magnificent feast, the Dark King said with an inscrutable, cold smile. Then, without another word, he vanished into the tide of darkness, his demonic robes radiating a wave of extreme greed. As the onlookers displayed such expressions, the attack from the human god child in the distance finally reached Xiao, with judgment erasing him from existence. Even though Xiao wanted to save himself, the devilish prison of extreme malice around him rendered him unable to unleash any power. He could only helplessly watch as the force of destruction, accompanied by the black and white torrent, poured down and completely annihilated him. I see now. His exhausted body, with only the faintest gleam remaining in his heavy eyes, finally understood what was happening after seeing the Dark King's insane actions. The madness in his pupils uncontrollably spread. On. The terrifying attack unleashed by a half-god rank powerhouse struck Xiao, who was barely hanging on to life, accurately crushing his bones and shattering his meridians. The sound of his destruction stabbed deeply into the hearts of everyone present. But as the sensation of death approached, Xiao could clearly feel the demon power inside him, like a mischievous child, rapidly transforming and growing, blood, flesh, and bones. At that very moment, under the combined attack of the purification power from the angelic altar and this world-destroying force, most of it had already been destroyed. Even his bloodline and soul were about to be wiped out in the next instant. Blood poured out, the sacred flame surged, and the power of dragon chi and bloodlines within him surged wildly. But now, Xiao was like an old man at death's door, unable to move at all. All he could do was laboriously open his eyes, trying to catch one last glimpse of the two beloved figures, whom he could never forget or let go of. In his blurry vision, figures shouting and roaring with madness pierced his heart. But at this moment, to prevent the human god-child from noticing, there was no other choice. All his power slowly dissipated, turning to dust, drifting with an unknown destination. His consciousness began to fade. Even the dragon god bone and the power of immortality inside him couldn't stop the destructive force. No one knew that the essence of his decaying body and other powers that evaporated from him secretly drifted toward the Dark King behind him in the sky. It was as if, in that moment, everything returned to its rightful owner. It's over. From now on, Xiao will forever exist in the annals of history. At this moment, countless destructive forces rained down on Xiao. The two archangels slowly stepped into the void, their expressions one of twisted satisfaction, as if admiring a masterpiece. The smiles at the corners of their lips were chilling. The roars of fury, tears, sorrow, and countless other emotions filled the hearts and faces of the Endless Flame Alliance. But it was all in vain. This deadlock continued to spread. Sorry, I can't let him face this alone. At this moment, seeing the situation was irreversible, Kai Lin's body suddenly radiated a blinding, tin-colored divine light. A vague, towering giant snake's shadow slowly spread from her soul, with traces of spontaneous combustion. Even with the suppression of the flame god's cauldron, it seemed impossible to restrain the terrifying divine might of this power. Beside her, Yun, her face streaked with tears, let out a light laugh. Just as she was about to unleash her self-detonation, a series of suffocating black demonic runes appeared, defying the flame god's cauldron's power and instantly strangling their movements in the cradle. In an instant, the two women were restricted, but they suddenly raised their heads to look at the distorted void above. There, a familiar aura began to twist. It was the power of demons. Xiao has fallen. Do you still wish to fight? The two archangels and the human godchild, forgetful immortal Xuanzuan, spoke simultaneously. Their words were like those of victors, mercilessly mocking the Endless Flame Alliance, which was nothing more than a pile of scattered sand without Xiao leadership. Afraid? What is there to fear? Fight to the death. Facing the overwhelming presence of their enemies, a series of earth-shattering roars echoed from the King of Beasts and the elites of the Endless Flame Alliance, igniting a surge of bloodlust. Immediately, countless powers surged, and faint destructive halos flickered. Even the tiniest light seemed to stir the enemy's coalition. But their strength was still too insignificant. No matter how much killing intent they unleashed, it was of no use. In an instant, The battle at the netherwall in the sky concluded with the defeat of Yao Ji and the others, while the attacks from the King of Beasts and his companion were completely thwarted. The battle of the netherworld seemed to be nearing its end at this moment, but no one regretted it. The strength of ants. Wait. The next moment, as Archangel Belen spoke, she noticed the dark substance above the netherworld realm shuddering, and countless streams of worldly energy suddenly trembled in an eerie manner. Then, at a visible speed, they converged toward the horizon, heading toward the edge of the netherwall. It was as though within the darkness at the edge of the netherwall, there was an endless abyssal maw, ruthlessly and greedily devouring everything in its path. And within that abyss, a madman, driven to the brink of insanity, was cheering and leaping with joy. What is that? Hearing Belen's strange roar, forgetful immortal Xuanzuan suddenly looked up and gazed at the sky. On the netherwall, dark, dizzying demonic runes flickered, their dense and repulsive emerald green energy pulsating, standing strong within the netherwall. The slightest ripple of that energy was enough to consume everything here. A glance at it was enough to suffocate one in a hopeless despair. Under that kind of power, perhaps only the human god-child at the half-god rank would remain unaffected, while the others felt their gazes tighten, their bodies trembling as they stared at the nearly hellish netherwall space. What kind of terrifying power lay hidden within that realm? Open it for me. Demonic God's Feast. Seeing Xiao Yin on the brink of death, about to perish at any moment, suddenly countless dark tides gathered in the sky, forming. All the emerald green demonic energy on the netherwall surged toward the source of the voice. A chilling and maddening roar tore through the sky, like a true greedy demon, sending the demonic energy into a rain of demons that poured down from above. Boom! As the emerald green demon rain fell and poured down, the angelic power in this world, along with the strength of the King of Beasts and others, were violently shaken. Countless divine powers quivered and then shattered into pieces. Boom! Boom! The thunderous sound awakened many of the Endless Flame Alliance's warriors who were trying to fight to the bitter end. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet caved in, and everything visible to the eye collapsed with a deafening roar, as if they had fallen into an endless hell, transforming into a previously unseen demonic abyss. Beneath the endless emerald abyss, molten green lava churned violently, filled with a malign, flowing ocean of energy. Streams of the most greedy demon beams. No matter how one looked at it, this surpassed the realm of hell. Should anyone fall into it, they would surely be obliterated, body and soul. Xiao Yin, along with the angelic altar and other items, was completely swallowed by the abyss of hell, falling deeper into the demon abyss. No one knew where the end of this abyss lay. All the demon rain fell into the abyss, its target seemingly Xiao Yin, on the edge of death, rapidly converging towards his body. The thick, evil, and mind-bending demon rain poured relentlessly into Xiao Yan's body. Boom, boom, boom. Even though his body was on the verge of complete destruction, with the injection of such vast demonic power, Xiao Yan's heart, reborn by the sacred flame, pulsed strangely, as if it had suddenly found something irresistible to devour. It was an insatiable, continuous absorption of the demonic power. Darkness King, are you trying to occupy Xiao Yan's body? To become the new Xiao Yan? Archangel Ares' face slightly changed. The demonic rain and the never-ending abyss of demonic energy below indeed made her sense a trace of fear. She immediately looked toward the sky, where the Dark King was crazed with madness. The Dark King did not respond. Suddenly, all the energy in this world was disturbed, and a series of world-shattering demonic storms began to swirl around the Dark King's body. In the center of the storm, a disturbing emerald green light cluster violently expanded. Darkness King. In that moment, the triumphant smile on the human god-child's face completely disappeared. Even a trace of fear surfaced deep within his pupils. Unease. Ha ha ha. The human god-child, Archangel Ares, and even Elder Xiao Yin, who was bound by the dark cage in the void below, all felt their minds tremble eerily. The power within their bodies quivered and even froze. Their eyes narrowed slightly as they saw the Dark King, who had perched in the sky, suddenly stretch out his bony arm, covered in countless demonic runes, from the center of the demonic storm. Slowly, he placed his hand on his own shoulder, a horrifying, deranged smile spreading across his lips. "Stinky brat, please forgive my cowardice. I am not a qualified demon, barely a slave to demons, but you will become, Xiao clan, the most outstanding person in all eternity." Rip! A sharp, tearing sound suddenly echoed through the air, and everyone watched in horror as blood poured from the Dark King's back, the corrupt, demonic blood and flesh completely separating. The entire back and his demonic robe were severed apart, creating a scene that was nothing short of terrifying. "Have you lost your mind? Are you insane?" Seeing the Dark King's reckless actions, the unease deep within the human godchild's soul grew stronger, even causing the protective black and white energy around him to tremble slightly. The source of his unease was not the Dark King, but the demonic robe, drenched in the Dark King's blood and torn flesh. Even from just sensing it, the human godchild could feel a chilling sense of dread emanating from the robe. It was as though this thing itself transcended the limits of human understanding. This was something that should not even exist in this world. "This is the surprise I've prepared for you." Amidst the demonic storm, a wild roar rang out, and all the demonic energy surged into the demonic robe, as if the robe itself were sculpting and perfecting its most impressive masterpiece. Without the demonic robe, the Dark King's aura greatly weakened. The demonic markings on his skin dimmed, and his true face was fully revealed, especially the faint glowing symbol at the center of his forehead, which completely exposed his identity. It was the Xiao clan's clan symbol, Xiao Yunming. Seeing the Dark King's aura falter slightly, the human godchild's rage exploded as he finally recognized the Dark King's true identity. This man was none other than the younger brother of the Xiao clan's leader, who had mysteriously disappeared after the battle of heaven and earth. What kind of evil power is this? Below, Archangel Ares trembled violently as the demonic robe slipped off the Dark King's body, his angelic wings shaking in fear. The unsettling energy spread rapidly. This was a power no human could resist. Destroy him! Overcome with fear, the human godchild could hesitate no longer. He raised his hand, and dazzling black and white energy roared down, sending shockwaves through the space as the very fabric of reality began to crack. However, when the human godchild's furious strike came crashing down, the demonic robe seemed almost alive. It instantly tore open a deep, bottomless maw, devouring his attack with a single motion. Even a powerful strike from the half-god-level human godchild was effortlessly consumed by the demonic robe, causing the elites of the allied forces to gasp in astonishment. This demonic robe was terrifyingly powerful. Who? After swallowing the attack, the demonic robe gave a mocking glance at the human godchild, as though saying, "Thank you for the gift." Then, in full view of everyone, the robe detached from the Dark King's hand, leaving behind the now weakened demonic storm. It surged forward like a streak of lightning toward Xiao Yan, who was barely clinging to life in the demon abyss below. Dark King, Xiao Yunming. If anything happens to Xiao Yan, I will not let you get away with this. Seeing the Dark King was actually the brother of the Xiao clan's leader, Elder Xiao Yan's face twisted with a cruel, fierce expression. The power of the demonic robe was too evil. In this situation, it clearly sought a new vessel. Even if the Dark King had given Xiao Yan the robe, could Xiao Yan truly control it? After all, this was an artifact so powerful that it disregarded even half-god level beings. One wrong move, and Xiao Yan might end up a puppet to the demons. There is no such thing as power without effort in this world. But I believe in this kid, because I see something rare in him, something that perhaps even my older brother never had. Who knows, maybe, in the end, this world will have to rely on him. The Dark King's long hair flowed slightly, his body weakened to the point where his strength had dropped from the peak of the reincarnation stage to barely reaching the pinnacle of his power. Clearly, This action had cost him dearly. But he had no regrets, for he had waited too long for this day. The ground beneath much of the netherworld realm shattered, transforming into an endless demon abyss. Even Archangel Ares did not dare to fall into it lightly, for the demonic energy below was so thick and vile that even she lacked the confidence to face it. From a distance, everyone could faintly see a dying shadow deep within the abyss. As the demonic robe and the torrential rain of demonic energy poured down, the man on the brink of death bizarrely rose to his feet. Under the watchful eyes of countless people, he instinctively extended his lifeless arm and seized the demonic robe, pressing it against his body with an overwhelming force. When the demonic robe joyously merged with Xiao Yan's body, the shimmering emerald dragon god bone let out a faint dragon's roar, as if resisting or rejecting the robe's power. The two forces locked in a standoff for 10 breaths. The greedy power within the demonic robe swiftly dissipated. It seemed as though they had formed a balance. In the next moment, the demonic robe, as if being crowned by an emperor, adhered to Xiao Yan's back. Dark green blood began to flow from the robe, seeping into Xiao Yan's body, which had already been reduced to a hollow shell of its former self. As the dark green blood coursed through him, the remnants of angelic power and demigod power in Xiao Yan's body slowly faded away. Pools of scalding evil blood gradually revived his heart, strength, and vitality. The sound of powerful heartbeats, reverberating from the depths of the demonic abyss, echoed clearly. The strong, rhythmic pulses struck Ares with the force of demonic sound. He didn't die. At this moment, Xiao Yan, Kailin, Belen, and the others were left speechless, stunned by the sight before them. Archangel Belen's gaze was grave as she stared at the barren abyss below, where the void had already twisted. There seemed to be some inexplicable fluctuations, slowly but surely, beginning to revive, rebirth. Ares, you should know the consequences of failure this time. They are beyond imagination. At this moment, the human godchild's face was filled with unprecedented seriousness. What he was witnessing shook him to his core, completely reshaping his understanding. Clearly, none of the Xiao clan members were easy opponents. But now, the contempt in his heart had vanished, as if he had grown weary of this farce. He intended to use his full strength to put an end to it once and for all. I know. Ares, come with me. Ares' face darkened slightly as his gaze fixed firmly on Xiao Yan, who was beginning to revive in the demonic abyss below. He knew he had to stop the demon's rebirth, or even someone as powerful as her, the Archangel Commander, would not be able to withstand the demon once it was reborn. Are we going down? Belen's body trembled at the thought. The overwhelming demonic power from the abyss below could likely only be resisted by a peak 9th reincarnation stage expert. To go down there now would be nothing but suicide. Let's go. Without further hesitation, the two leapt into the abyss, seemingly determined to eliminate Xiao Yan once and for all. This person could not be left alive. There would be endless trouble if he was allowed to live. Without the power of the demonic robe, how do you plan to resist me now? As the two archangels dove into the abyss, the human godchild's cold gaze was locked on the Dark King, seething with a murderous rage. He could hardly contain his desire to tear him to pieces. If it weren't for this madman's reckless actions, Xiao Yan would have died countless times over by now. The Dark King's actions had utterly enraged the human godchild. The fury of a demigod-ranked powerhouse was not something to be taken lightly. The Dark King was undoubtedly powerful, with exceptional talent, but he had already poured his life's effort into the demonic robe over the years in the netherworld. The loss of the robe would weigh heavily on him. Is that so? Then let's test it. The Dark King sneered as dark tides of energy surged around him. In an instant, the endless Flame Alliance's forces were confined by the netherwall. The demonic abyss's power was too evil for these strong warriors to resist. Meanwhile, the alliance of the angelic kingdom and the human realm center was filled with fear and unease, as dark matter and demonic energy relentlessly devoured their life forces. You brat, this is all I can do. The rest is in your hands. As the Dark King finished speaking, he once again engaged with the human godchild in combat. This was everything he could do for now. The rest was up to Xiao, as he had no choice but to buy him time. "I'll lend you a hand." Seeing the demonic circle begin to stir ominously in the abyss below, Elder Xiao nodded resolutely. Without looking back, he and the Dark King immediately launched an attack, engaging with the human godchild. But with their combined strength, it was unlikely they could deal with a demigod-ranked opponent like the human godchild. This was still a deadlock. In the distance, countless powerful figures of the Endless Flame Alliance stood atop the nether wall, their minds slowly penetrating through it, gazing at the nether city beyond. The energy of the world and the spatial order there were in complete chaos, as though a true divine domain was engaged in a fierce clash, far more terrifying than even the human godchild. The tension on the battlefield heightened once again, but the demon abyss below seemed completely unconcerned with this disturbance. Countless forces immediately contracted and gathered, surging into Xiao's body. "Can we kill him?" For some reason, as the body slowly moved closer to the demonic Xiao below, the Archangel Belin's angelic wings trembled violently. Even her delicate form was shaking, as if that leap was heading straight toward death. Whoosh, thud, thud. Ares didn't respond. Her gaze remained fixed firmly on the imposing demonic shadow below. The sound of a heartbeat near the demonic Xiao was painfully sharp, as if with the crowning of the demonic robe, the dark green energy spread over his body, melting and seeping into it. Chest, head, face. Where the dark green demonic power filled, the once dust-like flesh and blood had now been reborn in a completely new form, carrying an unparalleled aura of evil and malevolence. Demonic indomitability, flame immortality, dragon bones indestructibility. At this moment, Xiao's breath and vitality seemed to rapidly reignite from the ashes. Attack! Moments later, the two archangels had successfully reached the air above the demon abyss. As they felt the demonic power below resisting their descent, Ares' expression suddenly turned blank, her emotions vanishing. "Yes." Belin bit her lips slightly and, with Ares in the front and her in the rear, they seemed to form some kind of mysterious formation. Angelic chant. The most devout and sacred voice in their hearts rang out, like the dawn breaking through darkness, rising from the demon abyss. 10 eerie purple angelic wings suddenly detached from their backs, bloodied and causing the surrounding demonic power to ripple slightly. As 20 purple angelic wings fell, the breath of both archangels weakened instantly. But with the chanting of their angelic spells, the angelic wings formed a magnificent angelic sanctuary within the demon abyss. Inside the sanctuary, like shackles, like a prison, like something carefully crafted by a true divine domain to slay gods, an overwhelming divine aura that could obliterate everything burst forth. "Demon, your end is here." Seeing the emergence of the 20-winged angelic sanctuary, Ares suddenly smiled, her expression filled with an eerie, terrifying malice. In an instant, the angelic sanctuary created by the 20 wings slowly descended. Countless pure white sacred feathers spread out, causing the entire demon abyss to shake violently. This near-divine class angelic chant technique, now in a completely new form, once again launched itself toward the demonic Xiao below. Just like the previous angelic altar, with countless judgments, divine punishments, and other forces, all impossible to defend against. Boom, boom, boom. The twisted void around demonic Xiao began to solidify, as if sensing a real threat from the attack. His heartbeat grew increasingly rapid, and the temperature in the entire demon abyss suddenly spiked. What is happening? Far off, Kai Lin, Yun, and the others had their hearts in their throats as they looked at the glorious angelic sanctuary below, only to see even more glaring lights covering it. Dark green, golden orange, purple, pink. 10 distinctly different beams of light flashed simultaneously around demonic Xiao, alternating, converging, and then merging completely at one point, strengthening the demonic robe behind him. In the entire demon abyss, magnificent, towering soul mountains suddenly erupted, merging together into an earth-shaking force. Atop them, an endless surge of sacred flame erupted, rolling and raging in a maddening blaze, shaking the entire demon abyss with its overwhelming power. At the end of the Soul Mountain range, a sinister figure, shrouded in dark green light, surged forth. Bathed in this malevolent and sacred flame, its life force, once on the brink of death, began to surge with vitality. The Soul Mountains and the angelic sanctuary collided, yet there was no explosion of energy. Instead, countless arms, covered in demonic runes and sacred flame runes, gently pulled them down into the demon abyss. No, it's impossible. How could anyone survive the judgment of the angelic sanctuary? Looking at the figures standing within the convergence of demonic sacred flames and soul mountains, already riddled with wounds, but now slowly stirring, the Archangel Ares was left in stunned silence. The Angel Kingdom's combat strength was weak, but after the Slaughter Angel ascended to power, the Judgment Angel, one of the 5 ruling archangels, was easily obliterated when she secretly went to the first demon prison to rescue the Angel Queen. Both she and Belen had already sworn the angelic covenant, pledging eternal loyalty to the Slaughter Angel. As a result, the two of them devoured and absorbed the Judgment Angel's power, their strength naturally advancing to the 9th reincarnation stage, reaching the peak, strong enough to help the Slaughter Angel solidify her rule over the voices of opposition in the Angel Kingdom. This was the source of their power. The remaining 3 archangels were mostly neutral factions and lacked peak combat strength. Over time, the royal family's position in the Angel Kingdom had been suppressed. Reborn in a new form, the demonic Xiao Yan's cold face bore both sacred inscriptions and demonic runes, perfectly merging, filled with boundless arrogance. His dark green hair and skin were imbued with infinite, inexhaustible power, resembling a tyrannical demon overlord, looking down upon everything, despising all life. A chilling, eerie smile hung at the corner of his mouth, and his demon robe radiated countless celestial demonic lights, amplifying his imposing figure. Such immense power seemed to reach the 9th reincarnation stage, or perhaps the peak of the 9th reincarnation stage. He was no longer merely Xiao Yan. He had become the most pure-blooded demon king in existence, powerful enough to confront and even slay Ares and others. Destruction reborn, rebirth and destruction. Such a maddening power. Standing atop countless grand soul mountains, the demonic Xiao Yan extended his hand, feeling that long-missed surge of dominating power. His smile grew even colder. So, is this the only demon in the great 1,000 worlds now? Ares, still maintaining an elegant demeanor despite the overwhelming circumstances, watched Xiao Yan's evil form. She knew that the situation had already shifted beyond her control. In the next instant, the demonic Xiao Yan disappeared from the Soul Mountain, as though merging with the dark demon abyss itself. In the blink of an eye, he appeared silently beside Ares, his sinister voice sending a chill down her spine. At that moment, the angelic power within her froze instantly, unable to resist in the slightest. Boom! There was no need for any urging. It was as if angelic power and demonic power were eternal enemies, and upon their first contact, an explosion of overwhelming force erupted. The endless demonic power surged out, instantly shattering the bodies of the 2 archangels, leaving them on the verge of death. Without their angel wings, their strength had already plummeted. Before Xiao Yan, now reborn in his strongest form, they were no match. With just this simple strike, Ares realized the vast difference in strength between herself and the demonic Xiao Yan. Even at her peak, she couldn't contend with him. This demon possessed a bizarre power capable of directly confronting the holy angelic power. Not only did he possess the most mysterious and unpredictable demonic power in the great 1,000 worlds, but he had also perfectly fused the sacred flame with it. Now, this sinister demon, if not eliminated in time, would bring unimaginable disaster to the world. On the other hand, Belen's expression was completely different from Ares. Belen couldn't tear her gaze away from the demonic Xiao Yan. With every beat of his heart, her mind trembled. His skin and flesh were flawless, and his strength had grown to a terrifying level. He was too strong, so strong that it completely shattered her understanding. He was beyond what she and Ares could resist. The power of a demon, indeed impressive. But do you dare to kill me? As the Archangel Commander of the Slaughter Angel, if I die, how could the Endless Flame Alliance withstand the wrath of the Slaughter Angel? Only if I remain alive can the Endless Flame Alliance continue to cling to existence. Ha ha ha. Even as the demonic Xiao displayed such overwhelming power, Ares still taunted him with these words. If he backed down, she would be freed. If he remained indifferent, her death would provide the Slaughter Angel with the perfect opportunity to annihilate the Endless Flame Alliance. No matter the outcome, she was destined to be the victor. And with the Angel Queen, who was controlled by the Slaughter Angel, she would be resurrected with divine resurrection magic. She would still be reborn. A deadlock? This demon was still too young. The order of this world could never escape the Angel Kingdom's dominance. Faced with Ares' maddened words, the demonic Xiao body erupted with a dazzling surge of demonic power, boiling like a torrent of molten lava, suddenly engulfing the last traces of angelic power remaining on Ares' body. Then, his arms, covered with demonic runes, slowly reached out to stroke Ares' flawless, fair face, gradually sliding down to his delicate neck. As his hand gripped Ares' neck, a twisted smile appeared at the corner of Xiao mouth. He applied a slight pressure, as if pulling at something. In an instant, fear spread through Ares' mind. He could only feel that the remaining angelic power within him was powerless, unable to stir any storm. At that moment, he realized he could do nothing but let the other tear him apart. A deep, bone-chilling pain suddenly emanated from the connection between his head and body at the neck, which was then slowly pulled apart by the demonic hand. The intense tearing pain and suffocating sensation surged through Ares' soul and consciousness, making the once proud Archangel Commander realize just how close the shadow of death was. With a crunching sound, his head and body twisted as if knotted, torn apart countless times by the mad demon. Then, with a sudden twist, a crisp crack echoed, and they completely separated, shattering into two halves. Countless angelic blood poured out, just as his body and head split apart. All of Ares' strength and aura faded like a receding tide. Before the demonic Xiao could make another move, his demonic robe extended behind him, casting an endless, eerie shadow, greedily devouring Ares' corpse. In less than 100 breaths, Ares had completely fallen, with no sign of struggle or resistance. Ghoul, he's dead. The forgetful immortal Xun'er, leading the Angel Kingdom and the allied forces from the human realm center, watched in shock as Ares' aura disappeared into the demon abyss below. His pupils were filled with utter astonishment. Such a powerful being, at the peak of the 9th reincarnation stage, who even sacrificed his angelic wings, was unable to inflict any harm on this demon? When the demonic robe finished swallowing Ares' corpse, a milky white worm slowly crawled out from his head, then appeared in Xiao line of sight. It wriggled slightly in the void, as if countless fragmented memories surged from it. Clearly, these were all memories targeting Ares' mind. A mind-pupil worm. So you were just pawns under the Slaughter Angel's command. Xiao smiled as he looked at the scene. Xiao, let me go. The matter of Lord Lei, the Slaughter Angel, the Angel Kingdom, everything you want to know, I can tell you all. Just let me go. Seeing Ares' effortless fall at Xiao hands, Belen's spirit nearly shattered. Her body trembled as she begged, the Xiao clan's vengeance will be paid in blood. Gently crushing the mind-pupil worm, Xiao reached out once again with his demonic claws, extending them toward Belen. In the blink of an eye, Belen's head was separated from her body, and she too became nourishment for the demonic robe.